All right, now it's 3:04, so let's start with our webinar. Welcome to this webinar with the topic, how to solve the empty container repositioning problem with technologies. And we will present today real success stories. Let me start with my name. My name is Simon Meyer. I'm a growth architect here at BCG Digital Ventures. A few of you might know BCG, the big Boston consulting group company, and Boston Consulting Group is really specialized in deep sector experience, especially in shipping and logistics, and is really specialized in strategy consulting and business transformation. We here at BCG Digital Ventures, we are building startups and we are building innovations here. So it comes from a new business perspective where we start really looking into new business. And today, we like to look into new business and innovation companies. Let me introduce those two speakers. First of all, I would like to hand over to Asparuh Koev, the CEO and co-founder from Transmetrics, and second of all to Christian Roeloffs, the co-founder of xChange. Maybe, Asparuh, can you please give us a short introduction of yourself and the background of your company?
Hi, my name is Asparuh. Nice to meet you all. I have a software background, but I've been an entrepreneur since a very early stage. So this is the third company I'm starting. The idea of Transmetrics came from actually the terminal operators conference, where we were meeting with some companies, large transport companies, and they were always sharing how difficult it is to match supply to demand and to optimize operations because of demand being unpredictable. And then we took that lesson to heart and we started to look at how to solve it, and that's how we ended up with Transmetrics.
Perfect. Cool. Perfect, Christian. Also like to hear your intro. Thanks.
Let me continue. Thanks so much, Simon, for the introduction. My name is Christian. I'm CEO and co-founder of xChange. Actually, I used to be a colleague of Simon a couple of years ago, and then xChange sort of spun out of BCG. So the idea was born as part of some of our projects that we're doing for large container liner companies, port operators, terminal operators, etc. And now I'm super excited to be part of this webinar.
Perfect. And as we want to have this webinar very interactive, I would also like all the watchers please to contribute and to ask questions, and also for the very beginning to give us a better feeling where you are and when you stand, what your needs are, to reply to the polls. You see on the right hand side of the screen, you see polls coming up, and the first one is coming now actually. So let's start with the very low one. On a scale from 1 to 5, how much does your company struggle with empty container repositioning? So this is more or less to understand where you are and what your struggles are. Then the second poll would be, have you tried using any software solutions to solve the empty container repositioning problem in your operations so far? So did you try to do anything against it? And in the end, also to that we get a feeling of how big you are and how big your fleet is. So what's the size of your fleet that your company operates? How many containers you have? So what we are going to take in the very beginning to see where you stand, and the question section is in the tab left aside. So whenever something comes up, we will use those questions in the very end. So now let's have a look into what this webinar will be about. So in the beginning, we will discuss what's actually the size of the problem, and also how can technologies help with the container optimization. Then after this, we will get 2 demonstrations of softwares. Well, obviously this is Transmetrics as the first one, then xChange, and we hear real success stories of companies who have implemented those softwares. And then at the very end, you will get the chance to raise your questions, or I will ask the questions you have pushed into the system, and we will do a live Q&A session. So whenever there's something interesting for you, please bring it up. And at the end of the webinar, we will have 2 exclusive offers from our host, Transmetrics and xChange. And so this is your motivation to stick to the very end and get the special offers. Now let's first of all start with the problem and the numbers. So my colleagues from BCG looked into the size and into the problem and saw that actually every 3rd container which is shipped is moved empty. And this costs the industry up to 20 billion a year. And as you see, like the amount of it, when you drill it down to the company level, what does it mean for the companies? It actually represents 5 to 8% of all the total operating costs. And the good news about it is that if you would actually look at it and see what the inefficiencies are, then 30% of those costs can actually be saved by technologies. And not only your revenues or your costs, but also on an environment side, it has a very positive impact. So by reducing to not ship any empty containers, this would reduce actually the amount of 6 million tons of CO2 emissions a year. So these are the numbers. So we see what effect does it have. So how can we actually now think about to solve this problem? And here are actually 2 ways to solve those. So the one way is you look into the companies, so you optimize within your company and their Transmetrics solution. And the second one is how can we optimize this across all companies in a bigger scope? And Christian will go into detail with this one. So now I would like to hand over to Asparuh, our first speaker, and he will show us how companies can use predictive analytics to solve this problem.
Thank you very much, Simon. If you can move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
So just to introduce Transmetrics, what we are doing is augmented intelligence for transport planners. It's not artificial intelligence, because we want the transport planners to remain in the driving seat, because they can take the experience and responsibility of managing the transport operation, but we also want to have artificial intelligence behind the scenes, which helps them to do their job in a very efficient way. Then if you move on to the next slide. We have actually applied our technology specifically to the problem of optimizing empty storage resupply and maintenance for empty containers. And there are multiple benefits for actually optimizing this process, especially with predictive analytics. First of all, you can reduce the fleet that you're using. There can be up to 10% reduction of the total fleet size. You can reduce the logistics cost for empty containers by moving them more efficiently and avoiding unnecessary moves, which reduces your total cost. And then finally, you can both reduce the maintenance of containers, and you can also do the maintenance at the most optimal location by further cutting the maintenance costs even when it's necessary. And then this gives you also one version of truth. Everyone has objective data for planning. You can get rid of Excel and all the levels in the organization, the global team, the regional teams, and the port teams can plan optimally. So if you can move to the next slide. We have, just to introduce, Transmetrics is generally working with the largest players in the industry. We have done some projects with container shipping companies. If you can move to the next slide. In particular, there is a success story which is also published on our site, and there's a press release and you can read it in more detail. But in a nutshell, we've implemented a solution at Nile Dutch, which is a major shipping line, number 33 on the Alpha Liner list. Where they have about 80,000 TEUs of containers. And generally, by using predictive analytics, we managed to reduce the container fleet employed by double-digit percentages, and also the storage costs and the logistics cost. Of course, this was not an achievement of the software by itself. It was an achievement of the team of Nile Dutch, which put really a lot of hard effort into optimizing their operation, and then after that to keep on keeping it optimal over the long term. But software definitely helped to give them this cutting edge in operations and save a lot of cost. And I saw Carlo is actually one of the people who joined the conference, so maybe if we have time, we can just let him say something at the end. So how do you use something like Transmetrics with predictive analytics? There are 3 levels. The first level, which is the most basic, is to use the data cleansing and data enrichment and business intelligence reports, which give you the historical perspective of what is going on in the company, which already can prevent quite a lot of wrong decisions and can suggest how things can be more optimal, especially if you're using a modern system which collects big data, let's say. But second of all, what is more interesting is you can build an optimizing model on top of that historical data, which suggests you where the inefficiencies are and can suggest how to address the inefficiencies in kind of in a dynamic manner. And this helps you to do what-if scenario building, strategic optimization, and so on. But the third thing, which is the most interesting, is to use the predictive optimization on the fly, which means that every day you make a plan for the demand of the next 12 weeks. You make a plan for how to optimally resupply containers to meet the demand based on basically millions of different variables about what could happen and how costly are different operations. So the software selects the most optimal plan, and then you can use that in order to guide you into what you are actually going to do. So if you move to the next slide, behind the scenes, what you have is a precise seasonal modeling of future container demand for at least 12 weeks ahead, because we need to know what how much the consumption of containers is going to be. And as you can see from the chart, it changes dramatically throughout the year in some cases. And then there is a full cost model of the operation, because we need to know also how expensive it would be to keep containers in certain locations, to move them around, and so on. So maybe I can just show you a bit of the live system. Let me see if the screen sharing is going to work. Okay, so now you can see the live system of Transmetrics. It's a web-based system which connects to the transport management system of the company which we are optimizing. And what the data that you see right now is for a fictitious company. It's not a real case with real data, but it's lifelike, so I can show you some things. For example, if you go to the first level, which I explained, which is the purely historical data, and we look at what are our storage costs for a certain port. So I just choose the port of Rotterdam for a period of January to August. What we can see is that we are now getting in Rotterdam more and more containers stored. So our strategy at the moment is not optimal. There is something going wrong. And we also see that as a result of that, the cost, both the current one and the predicted for the next 2 or 3 weeks, is going to be too high. And it can really be expensive, like 10,000 euros per week. Therefore, something needs to be done. To understand what can be done, we can, for example, go to another report just to understand how the containers are coming through. So we again look at the port of Rotterdam reports. We look at, let's say, the same period, and we look at which containers came in, how many containers we got in. We see now that we are getting more and more containers returned from customers. It's a seasonal thing probably, and how many containers we are getting released. So what we can see, and we can put a trend line, is that in the past we had a very large disbalance in Rotterdam. So there were about 60 containers going out and less than 20 coming in. While now the gap is closing, we are getting more and more containers returned, while the ones going out are much more stable. And then if we look at the ones which are brought in by ship from other locations, which is the light blue line, we still keep on resupplying Rotterdam with containers as we were before. So actually there is not or even if we add on the trend line if we add the light blue trend line, we can see that actually we are, even though the gap is closing, we are still keep on supplying more and more containers, which leads to more and more cost. But of course, this is where we go to the next level, which is where the software can actually tell you how much all of this is going to cost also in the future by applying the optimizing model. So now we have 3 depots in Rotterdam. It calculates how many containers you are going to have for the future. Now we are in August. So it not only has the historical data for August, but if you look on the right, it has the full plan until the end of August. And it tells us that this month we have already kept too many containers and we are going to pay a big bill for the saving. But in reality, the software also knows what is going to happen in September too, because it's a predictive software. It's not just about the past. And it has already made a plan of how we can get rid of quite a lot of containers. So that actually in September, if we follow the software instead of doing what we were doing historically, we are going to end up with actually zero cost, which means that we are going to save about 30,000 euros for 1 month for that port only. Only in terms of storage, not talking about the empty logistics, not talking about the number of containers used and so on. So in order to do that, the software, of course, has to have to know what the demand is. So that's why it has the forecast. It knows for each of the ships, which is going to arrive in Rotterdam for the next few weeks, it knows how many containers will be loaded on that ship, based on the statistical model, the demand forecast, and based on data mining the last few years of data, and based also on the bookings which were received up to now. So all of this is put into a hat, figuratively speaking, and out of it comes a number, which is the amount of containers. We also allow people to change the number. So you can always say, okay, it's not going to be 85, it's going to be 125. And then it gets split by port and so on. So based on this demand, the software actually also can give you a plan, and it calculates it like that. So for Rotterdam, for the next, let's imagine that we're in the beginning of August now, and that you have a certain balance of containers. So it calculates how many containers are going to be loaded and unloaded on each of the ships. So we have different types of containers, different grades, like normal graded and so on. We have different ships which are arriving on different dates, 7th to 9th of August, 14th to 16th of August, and so on. And it calculates how many containers are supposed to be loaded or unloaded in order to keep the balance of Rotterdam optimal, and in order to reach into the situation where in September we are going to not have this cost anymore. But and of course, again, the planner can intervene. The system has proposed a number, but the planner can always enter another number for loading and discharging for each of these port calls. And this is where, and of course, this is where the problem becomes interesting, because this is not too much data, and you can keep in your head, and you can calculate how much you have to carry. But in reality, what the real operation looks like is more like this. So it's the same model, but then you have multiple ports, many ports. You have many ships, which are happening almost every day. And then a real planner actually has to decide what each of these numbers means, and the changing of every one of the numbers actually changes all of the picture for the future. And there are multiple ways to optimize. I showed you the storage costs, but there are several different aspects that you have to optimize. So storage cost is just one of them, but then you have the grading, handling, repair, stevedoring, repositioning, cabotage, and so on. And all of this has to be kept into one model, and it's too much for the planner's head to calculate properly. That's why the system is calculating it and making proposals about how to move the containers. But at the same time, it always leave the planner in final control. They can always change the numbers and go with a different plan at the end of the day. And of course, this is what I demonstrated here is for a shipping line, but the same software can be used in several different scenarios. So we are using it for an owner of specialty containers, basically chemical containers. The same logic can be used also for rail companies and for intermodal companies with more or less the same approach. And in all of these cases, again, you can have a double-digit saving in terms of your total costs.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to present.
Already super advanced. Maybe you can give us a quick feeling of what are the technical requirements a company needs to set up such your solution.
Okay, you have to have a transport management system, which is already in place. We are not a transport management system. We are a layer on top of that. You have to have the good quantity of data, let's say 1 or 2 years back going data. If your operation, you have to do the statistical model. And what you don't need to have is perfect data quality, because in logistics, data quality is always very bad. So we have a very powerful layer of cleaning the data. So if you're worried about the data quality, we can handle it.
Okay, perfect. So with this, then, is that all from your side as well?
So thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for giving us this insight. With this, we would then hand over to Christian, because he will now give us an insight of how you can optimize across various companies.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Simon. Very interesting. I think, Asparuh, how deep in the data pools you're working there, and how much data actually sort of real planners have to keep in mind in order to optimize their repositioning. Now to recap, and I think, Simon, you have to switch to the next slide. To recap, what we've seen was that there is that repositioning is a huge issue for the entire industry. So huge, in fact, that it costs up to $20 billion per year. And we've also seen that now you have to potentially also use technology to optimize your own equipment situation, your own equipment flows within your own company in order to reduce that cost. But the problem is that many of these dollars, so to speak, these cost items, they're very company specific, and you can't really optimize them away because they might be due to your very specific trade network, your client distribution, i.e., where do your importers sit, where do your exporters sit? You might not be able to change that. It might depend on your sailing schedule if you're a liner. So there's a lot of factors that come into play and that determine your own sort of at least minimum level of empty repositioning that you would have to do in order to move your boxes from where they are right now to where you actually need them. But the interesting thing is that other companies in the market have the same issue, and they might actually have the exact opposite issue that you have. And you can actually optimize across companies to further reduce the total level of cost within the industry, and of course, your own cost level as well. Interestingly, for example, Nile Dutch, we've just seen it in Asparuh's slides, implemented Transmetrics, and then decided to sort of hook that up with xChange as well, in order to then sort of leverage that across companies and also work with other companies in order to reduce repositioning costs. And that's basically essentially what we do. We provide efficiency through collaboration, allowing equipment users or container owners, like large leasing companies, you see a Seco here, but also small owners like container traders, to collaborate and to work together with container users on the other side. So Kanaga, HMM, CMA, CGM, who would then sort of on a spot basis dip into this almost global equipment pool in order to reduce their own repositioning costs. To give you an example, imagine a large carrier like an HMM has a lot of container equipment available in still on the previous slide. Still has a lot of equipment available in Antwerp, and they actually need it in Shanghai. It's a common problem amongst global carriers, and now they're looking for somebody to reposition these boxes, ideally with cargo, instead of having to move them empty. And on xChange, they find this partner. It could be a Kanaga that they lease out their equipment to. It can be another liner like CMA, or even what we see sometimes on xChange now, that they just get subleased to the rail companies that use the sort of One Belt, One Road initiatives, railroads, to move the containers back to China. But that's all sort of theory. If we go to the next slide now, we decided to give you a few real-life examples of how actual customers use xChange. First example is Transinsula. Transinsula is a relatively small container liner based in Lisbon in Portugal. And they use xChange for both using as well as supplying equipment. Oftentimes the deals are relatively small because they don't have so much cargo. But if they save the repositioning for just one container from, let's say, Lisbon to Italy, they can already save $300 to $400. And of course, that's already worth the effort. Transinsula currently works with about sort of 5 regular partners on xChange. They have smart contracts set up with each of these partners, so they can just book and use these containers on a very fast-moving spot basis. And they essentially do all their billings through xChange. So as soon as they've either leased in boxes or leased out boxes to their partners, they don't have to worry about the invoicing or the payments anymore. Everything is covered on xChange. Another example, maybe on the other spectrum, is Kanaga. We've seen it on the slide prior, and now we see it on the next slide as well. Of course, a bit of a bigger user, not so much of a supplier. Kanaga mainly uses xChange to find one-way containers that they would then use as shipper-owned containers for their freight. Oftentimes ex-Europe into other sort of global locations or regions. Kanaga now works with more than 20 regular partners, so you see it works on both ends of the spectrum very well. They're a big fan of our container insurance, which means that all the units that they pick up through xChange are automatically insured against total loss, and now also against all damages. So actually, from the time of getting a deal on xChange and closing a lease contract or a one-way lease contract on xChange, from that moment onwards, they don't have to worry about anything anymore. They're financially secure. Everything's insured. We handle the negotiation with the depots, the surveyors, the repair companies. We do all the billing and invoicing for them, so they get the pickup credits credited to their account in real time. They don't have to wait for money. And what they're a big fan of is our reviews and rating system, which essentially means that they can really evaluate whether they want to work with a new partner before they engage in a business relationship, because of course they need a lot of reliability in their equipment supply. So they want to make sure that all the partners they work with actually have a good track history or track record on xChange. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you, because this is still, even though these are real life examples, it might still be quite theoretical for you. So I ask you to just use the questions tab on the right-hand side to drop me a few locations, a few ports, a few stretches, a few relations, a few equipment types maybe that you would be interested in having a closer look at. And then I'll do the same as Asparuh, share my screen and give you a real sort of real-time or real-life insight into what the situation is right now on xChange, how many users there are to reposition your containers if you want to supply, or of course, how many suppliers there are for your cargo if you want to pick up containers on a one-way basis. So I'll ask you to do that in the next 1 or 2 minutes while I go over the next 2 slides. We go to the next one. Now the question is, what makes us unique, or what makes us successful in setting up this platform? And we believe that it's really the combination of neutrality and being online and sort of semi-automated. Of course, one-way moves, container repositionings, collaboration with other partners happens today as well, or has happened since the existence of the container, I guess. But it has always been either on a very personal level, so you need a personal relationship at your partner's company. So I always say it's Michael from Hamburg Süd who works with Klaus at Hapag-Lloyd side, and they chat with each other on the phone every week and sort of discuss, hey, where can you help me out? Where can I help you out? Where can we share assets? But from that description already, you see it's very manual. It's very, very much dependent on personal relationships. What if Michael suddenly quits his job, or worse, goes to Hamburg Süd as well? Suddenly that link is not there anymore, and you have to spend a lot of time and effort to build up the connection again. And of course, it's not scalable. And the second approach that happens today is, or has happened since the existence of the container, is that companies tend to work with brokers, and brokers basically the same function as a real estate broker or real estate agent. They use their personal network to help you find partners, and then they are usually acting as your contract partner, which of course is very, very manual. It's quite expensive. It's quite costly because you pay a transaction fee per unit, and it's not really scalable as well. How does it work on xChange? We go to the next slide while your questions are still rolling in. We essentially cover the entire transaction process online. Means from the moment you enter xChange, you have the opportunity to find partners, to search for one-way opportunities with our search engine. Works like a search engine on Opodo, Expedia, or Booking.com. You can then negotiate with the partner directly in real time and online. All the terms are already registered online. All the contracting is done online. You don't have to involve lawyers anymore. Everything's taken care of by the platform. Then after release, the platform takes care of the track and trace and the monitoring effort that you usually have when you either lease in or lease out units, which is actually an interesting thing. In one way, it's actually the biggest problem is oftentimes not finding a partner, but it's then managing the transaction, managing the one-way, and our track and trace system sort of greatly supports in that. And then I mentioned it a couple of times on the examples with Transinsular and Kühne + Nagel. The platform also takes care of all the financial flows. Then we manage the invoicing, we manage the payment handling for you. So as a small trader, for example, you don't have to worry about sending small invoices with $5, $10, $50 amounts or sums across the globe to your partner in China. Everything's netted through xChange, and we manage the payment handling for you, which basically happens automatically. On top of that, you can also now buy a lot of third-party services as value-added services through xChange. I mentioned the insurance before in Kanaga's case, which makes sure that you actually have a lot of security when dealing through xChange with your global partners. Cool. Now, as promised, let me quickly share my screen. I see that there's a few sort of questions that have rolled in for stretches. Let me just do this. Share here. You should be able to see my screen. This is now xChange. As Transmetrics, it's an online platform, so you don't need any installation. The only thing that you need is a personal login and your password, and then you are able to enter the platform. All the partners that are on xChange are automatically vetted and background checked, so you are safe and sound when dealing with your partners. All right, so let's have a look at this. I'm logged in as Florian, my colleague. We see here on the dashboard, we see our search engine on the left-hand side and our newsfeed on the right-hand side, and we can now use that to find partners. The newsfeed is a little bit like our mini version of Twitter or LinkedIn, where you see what other partners, what other companies in the network are up to. For example, JJ Logistics, they're currently interested to use 40-foot high cube units from Colombo in Sri Lanka to Nhava Sheva in India. And they need 30 days to move these boxes, and they're willing to pay $2.50 per day afterwards as a rental fee. I can use this to find partners, but maybe more interesting is the search engine, because we've received a couple of questions. We have Antwerp to Russia, the Baltics. So we say, I want to use containers ex-Antwerp into Russia. Russian Federation, there we go. I don't care so much about the equipment type. I just want to see what's available there. Let xChange do the work. I scroll down, I find 27 matches of potential suppliers. Just expand this. People are interested to supply 40-foot reefer units, 40-foot high cubes, 20-foot standard units into St. Petersburg, Moscow, etc. And if I'm keen to use these units, if I'm keen to ask to pick up these boxes, I can basically click on View Details, and I send the request straight through to the owner of the equipment. I can negotiate directly with these owners of the boxes, negotiate terms, and then pick up the boxes for my cargo. In terms of timing, you oftentimes see that a negotiation takes less than 5 minutes if both parties are quite confident on the terms that they need. But of course, it can take up to 24 hours until a deal is negotiated. Let me do a second example. There was one question about tank containers. Tank containers are probably the only equipment type that we don't cover yet. You can see here, looking for special equipment, you can see 20s, 40s, 45, sort of in terms of the length, and then a lot of special types, special, how do you say, dimensions of the boxes, be it just general dry containers, be it open tops, pallet wide side doors. This you can all choose, but they're all standard dries, so we don't offer tank containers as of yet. Now, what else was there? Okay, we're looking for supply ex-China to Europe. So again, I want to use containers. I want to pick them up in, well, I can say China, just as a general broad overview, and I want to drop them off in Europe, maybe in Europe North, to include the North Range harbors. I don't care so much about the equipment type. Of course, I could specify them, but let's just leave that out. I hit search, and I want to find out how many boxes are available, by which partner, who can I work with, whose boxes can I use. Very popular stretch from the supply side, 198 matches with a lot of different companies. And again, a couple of traders show up at the top Ovi Lahtinen, for example, is one of our Finnish traders that are on the platform. You can see here even that he has a very good performance review from their past transactions, keeps their data up to date, responds very quickly, releases the boxes very quickly. And here I could pick up 40-foot high cube units, ex-Shanghai, into Duisburg, Hamburg, Rotterdam, Helsinki, and Budapest. So we see that he's finished. Again, if I want to use these units, I can click View Details. All the terms are pre-filled. I can negotiate that with the partner directly and then use his units. I think we are a little bit short on time. So what I'll do is I'll just move this back to Simon. Thanks so much.
Maybe,
I just need to finish.
Thanks a lot, Christian. So for me, it would be interesting. What are the regions where you see like the most traffic and actually the highest liquidity of containers?
Yeah, good question. Also relates back a little bit to sort of what we've seen on the platform. We see three big areas where there's deepest market liquidity on xChange. Number one is intra-Europe. So there's a lot of movements both within the Baltic as well as the Mediterranean Sea. Second region is everything in and around the Indian Ocean. So I always say sort of from Dubai through Pakistan, India, Southeast Asia. There's a lot of traffic on an SOC basis. So a lot of units being used on a one-way basis. And then everything in and out of China. So as we've seen new build units ex-China into Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand, but also into Europe, and then vice versa. A lot of empty units being used ex-Europe back to China on an SOC basis oftentimes.
Very good. Then I would say if you finished your presentation, let's come to the point where we talk about our exclusive offers. And there were two. Well, Asparuh, you started first, so probably it's time now to reveal your offering and how can users get in touch with you after the session.
Okay, so if you can move to the next slide, you can review all the text. Basically, we help a lot of companies to come up with customized data-driven solutions to problems. It's not just empty container repositioning. We are doing also network design and optimization. We are doing trucking. We are doing warehouses and so on. So what we propose is that if you drop us a line telling us what you're trying to solve at the moment, we give you a free consultation of how it could work. With no strings attached, we don't charge you anything. We don't try to sell you our products. We just try to help you out genuinely into moving your big data-driven predictive analytics project ahead. So just let us know if you're interested. We will try to use as much as possible the founders of the company who are the most experienced people, and it helps us also to understand what people are doing. So really keen to hear from you.
Okay, so 3 hour consultancy from a data professional. And the second one then is Christian. What do you give? What do you give?
It's a bit straight and simple. Sign up and get 1 month for free. So we operate on a membership fee basis because all of our members are vetted and background checked prior to getting access. We ask for a monthly subscription fee to use our system. And if you sign up through the webinar or straight after and mention the webinar, of course you'll get 1 month membership for free.
Okay, perfect. That sounds great. And I think now it's actually time for our listeners to raise and ask questions to you guys. So we have seen, or we have heard from Asparuh, very technical, the data analytics part. And I think it's impressive how much data you're actually moving. Then on the other side, we've seen Christian presenting his platform of xChange. And a straightforward dealing, offering and demanding matching. So I'm looking into here and the questions, and if I don't see any, I have like 1 to 2 I can ask myself, which I think are worth looking a bit deeper. But really, to all listeners, don't be shy and ask them now. I think there are plenty of questions which can raise up for your business, and we are very willing to take them now. So as a first one, maybe to Christian. So to become a member, what does it need, and what do you have to do actually to become such a member?
Sure. I mean, becoming a member is relatively straightforward. We need to do a quick demo call to make sure that you are that your need actually fits to what we offer on xChange. Then you sign up, and then we conduct a sort of a background check and a vetting process to make sure that you're actually reliable and trustworthy, and don't disappear with the container that you've picked up from one of our other members. That background check usually consists of us collecting some data about your company, some background information, some trade references, and yeah, then giving you an onboarding training to the platform. So it's a relatively straight and simple process. Afterwards, we then work with our onboarding and customer success team to make sure that your systems, if you have systems like Transmetrics or transport management system or equipment control system, that these are actually sort of properly linked up to our platform.
Okay, perfect. And for you, Asparuh, since I believe like getting all the data is also a process which is which needs like a lot of effort, but how much time do you actually need to get started, and when do you see first results?
Oh, I showed you already about the 3 levels of sophistication. The first level, which is just the historical reporting, can be achieved in a couple of months. And it's not very difficult. It's actually quite easy for a BI solution. So we are very good, and the software is very fast in connecting. We need to build an integration between the transport management system and Transmetrics, where we exchange the data at least once per day, or we receive the data at least once per day. Once this is working, then you can start getting the historical data, and then the other 2 steps, the optimization and the predictive optimization, are enabled in another couple of months each. So pretty much you can have benefits 2 or 3 months after starting with the implementation, and the full benefits can be there in half a year, let's say.
Okay. And when you look at your models, there are basically human inputs, and there's an algorithm which learns. So how do you see actually the balance of like how much human input you have to give to your tool, and how much does the algorithm does?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. There is a very new concept in artificial intelligence, which is called human-in-the-loop artificial intelligence. So the idea is that you, on one side, have the AI, on the other side, you have the human, and the AI provides a default suggestion. Then the human accepts it or rejects it or changes it, and then the AI learns from what the planner, in this case the human, has done. So every time the planner actually goes into the system and changes one of these default values that I showed you, this is a signal to the artificial intelligence that something has to be improved in the algorithm. So it can learn from the planners. So that's from the side of the artificial intelligence. From the side of the planners, people also tend to trust the system more and more as time goes by. So in the beginning, they probably override everything. And in 6 months' time, they just keep 70–80% of the decisions just as the AI took them, and then just change 10 or 20% of it.
Okay. Okay. So if a shipping liner would come to you and ask you, when can I start? Like, the starting point would be in what time frame, more or less, just to this kid?
Is it to me or to Christian?
Yeah, to you again, sorry.
Right now we are super busy with a lot of integration customers. So if you want to start, I would say that somewhere in late September would be a good starting point. But you should tell us now rather than in September.
Perfect. A full line. Maybe Christian, because I've seen the company in Hamburg, so maybe you can explain a little bit about how do you see like the further development of xChange and what's the vision behind the platform when it evolves more and more. So right now you're doing the matching. What are basically the next steps, also like as functionalities or for the full platform?
Sure. Yes. I think what we strive for is really a seamless peer-to-peer or company-to-company collaboration platform, be it for container one-ways, but also for container resale in the end. Why not support companies optimize their container resale operations? There could be an integration for booking slots or other third-party services through xChange. So it's really optimizing collaboration and communication across companies. Actually, there was also another question that came in from the viewers, from one viewer, sort of asking whether whether xChange will also move towards a true sort of gray box platform for managing all aspects of combined container fleets. And I think that's actually what we're not going to do, because we believe that companies should still remain the owners of their own assets, be in control of their own assets, but have the opportunity to work with partners and other companies globally to optimize their own fleets. Greybox failed. Greybox, for those of you who don't know, Greybox is essentially the concept that there's just one neutral container fleet with gray boxes or no logos on it, and all other companies can just plug into this pool, and that essentially didn't work because there was always a fight between who gets which box, and by keeping ownership with the owner, that you can avoid that.
Okay. Now I actually see also from our customers coming in questions. So to you, Asparuh, one early question was, how and where do you get your data?
The data from the transport management system, and it's through a kind of one of these very technical integrations which your IT people will know all about. And when we normally get it fully automated during the night when no one is around, the systems connect and talk to each other in order not to disturb the daily operations. So when you come in the morning, everything is already loaded, processed, the optimization is finished, and so on.
Okay, understood. And let's now switch back and forth to you guys. So Christian again, one question to you is, how often are there cases when container returned in damaged conditions, and how normally it would be solved? Like, how would it be solved if there's damage?
Yeah, I mean, of course, where there's a container being transported, there are damages, because forklift drivers are not as careful with somebody else's containers than they are with their own house or something. So it happens. I'd say 99% of transactions on xChange carry a DPP by the supplier, which means that the supplier or the owner of the container actually carries any damage to the container up to $100 US. So all the little scratches and dents to the box that happen as a sort of wear and tear damage, they don't need to be negotiated between user and owner of the container. The owner has to carry that risk. For any damage above and beyond the DPP, there is our damage insurance, which covers all these risks and all these damages. So you don't need to worry about it anymore. And in that case, we would get in direct contact with the depot and make sure that the boxes are repaired into the pre-agreed container condition. For those boxes where there's no insurance selected, we support then the discussion between the owner and the user of the container to find a mutually agreeable solution on, hey, which damage do I really need to repair and which damage was already there beforehand or is just a wear and tear. So it's a bit of a negotiation, but so far we've always found a mutually agreeable solution.
Okay, understood. And Asparuh, to you now, one user would like to know how accurate your demand projection model actually is.
It's quite accurate. We are not participating in any kinds of prediction Olympics. So the goal is never to achieve the maximum possible demand, let's say, prediction accuracy. The idea is to get the numbers which the optimization needs in order to take the right decision. So when we predict the demand and we suggest the decision turns out to be about 95% plus optimal, let's say. And this is what we care at the end about, how optimal was the final decision. So it's more focused on the optimization.
Okay. Now there comes a question from Richard Butcher, Managing Director from Bull Container Group. And he is asking if he can plug into xChange to establish container stocks by carrier or leasing companies on inventory that needs to be sold or end-of-life units. So what happens when a container actually cannot be used anymore?
Interesting question. And there is a sort of early beta feature of a resale platform or resale opportunity platform where you can actually publish your resale stock, where you say, okay, these boxes, if somebody wants to take them for one way, yes, you can do that, but much better to just buy them outright. You can do that. It's still in very early beta, but feel free to reach out and we'll have a chat about it.
Okay. Then there comes another one. So the background here is air freight, not sea freight, but we are facing similar issues. Question regarding the optimization is, are cargo flows not all going into the same direction, meaning that overstock of containers are happening at the same location? Question mark. How do you deal with that? So actually, is this more like meaning that overstock of containers are happening at the same location?
Very good question. It's something that we hear again and again, especially from the large liner companies, so the large container liners. Out of the 20 billion that we've seen at the start, where we said, okay, that's the global cost of container repositioning. Out of that, about 2/3 are structural imbalances, which you can't really do anything about. For example, China always exports more than it imports, so you always have to bring in empty boxes into China. There's nothing you can do about it at a certain level. But 1/3 of those 20 billion actually, and that's something where you can collaborate with partners, with competitors, with suppliers to avoid.
I can add something to that. Actually, there is, of course, a long-term disbalance which is structural and you cannot do anything, but it is, the disbalance sometimes changes. So I've seen cases where between Northern and Southern Europe, for example, suddenly the balance changes because of vacations, and right now probably it's happening even as we speak, because some countries are taking vacations earlier and some are taking it later. And normally a lot of costly mistakes happen around such periods, like the summer vacations, Christmas, and so on, where people keep on sending empty containers into locations where where neither they are needed nor there is space to store them. And then you need to send them onward to somewhere else and then return them back and so on. So the devil is in the details, ultimately.
Okay, one to you, Asparuh, directly. User is questioning if you might have skipped this part, but are you working with any direct shipping liners, and what are the key features used by shipping liners in your case?
Yeah, I mentioned now that before. So the key, the shipping lines, basically, they require everything. So there are more than 80 screens in the solution. There are different optimization models. There are different views on the optimization results. There are different levels of forecasting and so on. So actually, to optimize the shipping line is so complex that everything else is easy in comparison. So we have different types of solutions, and the one for shipping lines has 3 times more screens than any of the other ones, put it this way.
Okay. Can you give also another question from a user? Can you give some data examples, just to name 3 or 4, what you have to collect additionally, let's say?
To collect, sorry?
Additionally, it says like what additional data should you collect? I mean,
yeah, well, there is a lot which you can collect. For example, we are getting real-time satellite positioning of ships because you need to understand the real ETA of the ship which is carrying the empty containers, and 1 or 2 days can make a big difference. We are getting, in terms of demand modeling, all kinds of market data which is included in the demand model from time to time. So it really is very open to big data. It's so very open to all the modern data sources which arrive. I would say that one thing which we are going to work on in the future is there is a lot of sensor data which is collected, especially around the more expensive containers like reefers and so on, where you can already predict whether there is going to be a damage on the container or not before it arrives in the port based on shocks and acceleration and so on. And this can help you to already plan their maintenance resources for when it comes in and so on.
Okay. Very good. One for Christian. This is about your platform and how it will continue or how it will evolve. So will the xChange platform move forward a true Greybox platform for managing all aspects of combined container fleets? Or like, how will it be? Like, is it going to be more broad?
No, I think we talked about this before. Actually, we don't see xChange moving towards managing a neutral container fleet like a Greybox fleet, but we rather think that it's going to develop into a communication and transaction platform or layer in the B2B or peer-to-peer company collaboration sphere. Making sort of transactions and collaboration between companies on an international and global level more efficient. We believe that ownership of the containers should still lie with the individual companies, because only then you can have real prioritization on who gets which box.
Okay, perfect. I think with those questions and those answers, actually we have had like really interesting insights into both solutions, and I think I myself got a really good understanding of it, and also I think it was quite nice to see that you can do a lot on the one hand side within the company when you're crunching data, and you also can do a lot by exchanging on a platform. So thank you very much, Asparuh, for your time, Christian, for taking the time and the insights.
Of course, you're very, very welcome. And I mean, if there's any further questions or comments or something that you didn't get to ask or remember to ask tonight when you're way home, feel free to request a demo on xChange or I guess on Transmetrics, and we'll be happy to clarify any further questions, any further points.
Perfect. In addition, after this webinar, we will send out a video of the recording. So for everyone who like to look up a few things, a question, or to see again the tool, that's also possible to review. Yeah, with this, thanks a lot, and hope to talk to you soon for the next topic. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.